Hi, thanks for stopping by. I've got just a short little story I want to share with you today about my fourth great grandparents. And I've got a picture of my fourth great grandfather here. This is Alexander Moraine Shoemaker, and he is my maternal fourth great grandfather, one of them. And I wanted to tell the story about him and my fourth great grandmother. Her name was Margaret Eliza Taylor. Now, Grandpa Alexander and Grandma Margaret were living in Missouri at the time that the Saints were being mobbed and driven from their homes. And Grandpa Alexander and Grandma Margaret knew the Mormons only as desperados. And nearly everyone in the area joined in the fight to try and exterminate the Mormons. Now, the story goes that it was a very cold, rainy period in Missouri, and they had one night a knock on the door. It had been raining for several days, and there was a hello that was heard at the door, and Grandfather Alexander opened the door, and there was a man standing there, and he told them that a whole company of Mormons were on their way, and they were seeking shelter. Grandfather Alexander's comment was very bold. He said, "I will furnish shelter and protection." And the messenger turned and he was gone. And once he was gone, Grandmother Margaret was quite concerned. She said, "I don't want to have a house full of Mormon desperados staying with us." And Grandfather told her that she could just go stay upstairs. If she had a problem with that, just go on upstairs. And in spite of the fear that she had, a large group of Mormons showed up at their home and were made to feel welcome. Well, Grandmother Margaret and Grandfather Alexander, they knew the truth when they heard it. And just 6 months later, they were baptized. And they were able to serve the saints in quite a lot of different ways. One of them is because they were still involved in the community, they knew a lot of the traps and tricks that some of the people were going to play on the Mormons, and they were able to give them advance warning and to keep them safe. Their first three children died in infancy, but they were promised that they would one day raise a family, and so they were very faithful to that end. Grandfather Alexander was not a very big man, and perhaps that was the reason why he opted to become a shoemaker as a trade. Grandmother was also very handy, and she helped make the tops of the shoes by sewing cloth and stitching them, and it was all done by hand. Interestingly enough, the same people that they had called desperados, they had now joined the church, and they became persecuted, and they were actually driven out of Nauvoo, and they joined the Charles C. Rich Company and made their way across the plains as pioneers. One thing I found of interest about the Charles C. Rich Company is that the Charles C. Rich Company was the group of pioneers that actually brought the Nauvoo Bell to the Salt Lake Valley, and so they were involved with that. They were one of the first families, the Shoemaker family, to settle what is now Plain City in Weber County. And Grandfather Alexander and Grandmother Margaret are both buried in the Plain City Cemetery. I have never been there, but I did see pictures on the internet showing their gravestones. So I maybe we'll make a stop out there the next time I pass through that way. So kind of an interesting story about once the persecutors then become the believers who then become the persecuted. I think that's a great example of their faithfulness and their diligence to what they knew to be true. So thanks for stopping by. We'll talk to you again later.